Hello, friends. The 1195th day of the war between Russia and Ukraine continues. Let's start with the strike on Russian airfields. Let me remind you that yesterday Ukraine carried out an unprecedented operation, attacking airfields of Russian strategic aviation located thousands of kilometers from Ukraine. Near military airfields, civilian trucks stopped, from which dozens of quadcopters took off and flew towards the airfields. At the moment, it has been confirmed that this was successful near Murmansk at the Olenya airbase and near Irkutsk at the Belaya airbase. The trucks either did not reach the other airfields for a number of reasons, or were unable to cause damage. Judging by the video, the main damage was sustained by Belaya, where, as Russian telegram channels write, they did not expect an attack due to the distance from the Ukrainian border, which is more than 4,000 kilometers. There are definitely losses among Russian strategic bombers, but they vary. The Security Service of Ukraine, which carried out the operation, claims that 34% of the entire fleet of such aircraft, or 41 boards, were hit. But this is not confirmed by objective data. OSINT experts, analyzing video and satellite maps, say that 8 to 12 aircraft were hit. It is unknown whether all of them were completely destroyed, or whether Russia will be able to restore some of them, or use them for spare parts. Russia does not name the exact number, talking about several aircraft catching fire. But if the real data turns out to be closer to the indicated estimates, then the loss of these aircraft will not have a significant impact on the potential of Russia's strategic aviation, which numbers up to 130 aircraft. If the data of the Security Service of Ukraine is correct, which, I repeat, has no objective confirmation, then this is significant damage to Moscow. However, this is unlikely to reduce the intensity of strikes on Ukraine, since Russia has previously used a few such aircraft to shell Ukrainian territory. Nevertheless, this operation is unprecedented, and it opens another new era in military affairs. Now, FPV drones, controlled from 1,000 kilometers away, can attack any object deep in the rear. And, naturally, this technology can be used not only by Ukraine against Russia, but also by Russia against Ukraine, and any country against anyone it doesn't like, and also by criminal groups to carry out assassination orders. Thus, the current war has once again shown that new technologies can make it total. And just as the mass use of FPV drones at the front has effectively turned the entire area around it into a dead zone, where all living things are destroyed, with new technologies for remote control of drones, the same can gradually happen to the rear, for each of the warring parties. Yesterday and today, many wondered what Russia's response would be to a strike on strategic aviation, which is part of the Russian nuclear deterrence infrastructure, and an attack on it, according to Russia's nuclear doctrine, is a pretext for a nuclear strike. However, since yesterday, the only statement on this matter is a press release from the Russian Defense Ministry, with a brief description of what happened and confirmation that several planes were hit during a terrorist attack with a drone attack. There are no statements from Putin, Medvedev, or other senior Russian officials. Federal TV channels also do not cover this topic much. However, all this does not mean that there will be no response. But it does indicate that the Kremlin has not yet worked it out, and therefore it avoids making any statements. This is a common tactic for the Russian authorities in any unexpected situation to take a break in order to decide on a reaction. However, it is noteworthy that the Kremlin, despite the attack, still sent a delegation to Istanbul, and its head Medinsky did not say a word about the attack at all following today's negotiations. That is, the Kremlin is showing that it does not attach serious importance to the topic, and it has not affected its position and plans in any way. But, I repeat, this does not mean that there will be no reaction to the strikes on the airfields. Most likely there will be, but Russia has not yet decided how exactly it will respond. Let's move on to military news. One of the main topics is the resignation of the chief of the ground forces Drapety. It followed the Russian strike on a Ukrainian training ground in the Dnipropetrovsk region, where 12 soldiers were killed. Announcing his resignation, the commander criticized the mutual responsibility in the Ukrainian armed forces and the irresponsibility of commanders for casualties among personnel. Mutual responsibility and impunity are poison for the army. I tried to eradicate it from the ground forces. We have no right to live in a system that does not learn. An army in which commanders bear personal responsibility for the lives of people lives. An army where no one is responsible for losses dies from within, he said. We will not win this war if we do not build an army where honor is not a word, but an action. Where responsibility is not a punishment, but the basis of trust. Where every commander is responsible for an order, for a decision for a person every day, Drapety added. Judging by this statement by the head of the ground forces, the shelling of the Ukrainian armed forces training ground was the last straw, and not the main reason for his dismissal. Indeed, this is not the first Ukrainian training ground to come under attack due to poor camouflage. But if you look more broadly, this spring and especially in May, the situation of the Ukrainian army at the front has deteriorated quite significantly. The Russians advanced in the Sumy region last weekend. The military telegram channel Deep State recorded the actual loss of the villages of Vodolahi, Volodymyrivka, and Kostiantynivka. Fighter Muchnoy writes that now the battles are underway for Kindrativka. The enemy is trying to cling to the northern part, attacking the area with FPV drones and infantry, and soon we will be able to leave this settlement. A difficult situation is also developing in Oksiivka, where the enemy has gathered a fairly large number of personnel in this area. The Russians are also approaching the neighboring village of Andriivka, and according to unconfirmed reports, there are already battles going on inside the village. At the end of May, military analysts, summing up the month, said that May was the most successful for Russia this year. According to Deep State, the Russians captured 449 square kilometers of territory in May, which was not only a record for the current year, but also the third result for 2024. It is worth recalling that our Telegram channel does not take into account the fact that in March the Russians drove the Ukrainian armed forces out of the Kursk region. But, nevertheless, the May advance is also extremely indicative. The largest loss of territory is in the area of the breakthrough on the Pokrovsk-Kostiantynivka highway, where the Russians captured about 200 square kilometers, as well as the offensive operation in the Sumy region, where at least 110 square kilometers were lost as of the end of the month. These two areas account for 70% of all territorial losses, writes Deep State. In addition, the enemy made significant advances in the Bahadar area and at the border with the Dnipropetrovsk region, approximately 50 square kilometers each. In the Lyman section, the enemy slowed down somewhat and occupied only 28 square kilometers, but by the end of the month, the situation in the Karpivka area began to deteriorate and fighting there continues.
Friends, I want to develop and strive for higher quality content, but my 2009 computer does not allow me to do this. If you have the opportunity to help me buy a new computer and make my dream come true, I will be very grateful to you. You will find the link in the description under the video and in the pinned comment. Thank you very much and see you in the next video.